अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगेन ततः मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय.
O Dhananjaya, winner of wealth, if you cannot firmly concentrate your mind on me, means if you can't meditate, then strive to attain me by Abhyasa Yoga. Abhyasa Yoga means practice. By the yoga of practice, by constant practice. So what is he saying here? He is addressing Arjuna and all of us as Dhananjaya, winner of wealth. You are experts in gaining the wealth of the world outside. How about tapping into the wealth within you? The wealth of thought power. How many of us have understood the power of our thinking? How many of us have used the power of our thinking for our own betterment and the betterment of the world? We have no clue. And it is because we don't understand the power of our thoughts that we are going begging to the world for fulfillment. What a pity. A person who understands that, as Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. If you understand that, you know it's all there. There's no need to go running after worldly things. So, but he also says Dhananjaya because a certain experience of the world is required in order for you to turn spiritual. That is why, even earlier we mentioned, you need certain experiences of the world. And a dynamic person, a person who is pursuing the wealth of the world dynamically, the same dynamism, the same energy is required for spiritual pursuit. Most people think spiritual person is a lazy fellow, just sits there and does nothing. That's not true. The amount of energy that is required for spiritual pursuit is slightly more than is required for worldly pursuit. So anyway, having said this, he says, if you are not able to meditate, then do Abhyasa Yoga. What is this Abhyasa Yoga? There are two kinds of practices, Abhyasa, that you can do. The first stage is, if the moment your mind slips to some other thinking, like for instance, let's take an example. Try it out. You're sitting there and you're repeating, Om, Om, Om. I don't know what the servant has cooked, and I need to phone the servant, and then yesterday the servant goofed up on the way. Before you know it, the mind has gone all over the place. So if your intellect is alert, the moment the mind slips to the home and the servant, you say, no, right now you're not supposed to think of the servant, you're supposed to think of Om. So you bring it back. Then it remains on Om for another 5 chants. Again it goes somewhere else. Oh, I was supposed to get some paper for my child's school tomorrow, I forgot. All this is while you're sitting meditating. So, when the mind slips from the point of meditation, if your intellect is alert, you bring it back to the point of concentration. This is one kind of abhyasa. You keep repeatedly doing this and then you find the mind is too restless and has gone all over the place. Then you understand, where does the mind go? Sorry? Correct. Wherever the desires are, the mind goes there. To a person who is concerned with the home, has desire with the home, the mind goes there. A person who is interested in cricket, with the mind goes there. I don't know what is happening in the World Cup match today, right? A person who is interested in golf will go there. A person who is interested in politics will go there. So, the mind goes wherever there is desire, right? So what must you do to get the mind back on course in meditation? Go back to the 3 practices of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga, which is given in verses 6 and 7. So there are 2 kinds of practices. Number 1 is bring the mind back to the focus of meditation. Number 2, drop the meditation, go back to karma, bhakti and jnana yogas. The ideal thing to do is to do both. If you do both, then you're doing, it's like when a tennis player is practicing to win the Wimbledon, let's say. There are two kinds of things that he has to do. Number one, play tennis with better and better tennis players so that his level of tennis goes up. Second, he has to focus on his fitness. So he goes back to jogging, goes to the gym, I don't know what all he needs to do, will look at his other exercises, look at the diet that he is following, and all this put together increases his stamina with which he can play more tennis, right? So there are two kinds of practices. Whatever you do, don't lose sight of the goal. You see, in spiritual practice, it's very important because the spiritual practices themselves, karma yoga is highly entertaining. If you think the world is fascinating, when you turn to the spiritual path, you'll find that is far more fascinating. Which means, when you learn the art of service, sacrifice, of dedicating your actions to a higher ideal, oh, that is so, that puts you on such a high that you will not want to have any more drinks. That is more entertaining. Bhakti yoga, the practice of bhakti itself is so enchanting that you tend to get stuck there. Jnana yoga, the mere imbibing of the knowledge, the manner in which the scriptures are presented, the thoughts that are presented are so fine, so subtle, that they themselves sweep you off your feet. And then there is a tendency to forget the goal. So therefore, never forget your goal. What is the goal? Realization, spiritual development. And then, in the seat of meditation, if you do certain things, it helps. Like, number one, you should be in a clean environment. That's why throughout the scriptures, and even here in this chapter, when he speaks of the 35 qualities of a Bhakta, he repeats Shuchi. Shuchi means you must be clean. This cleanliness is emphasized in our scriptures, and yet our country is the dirtiest country in the world. Wherever you go, you see filth. When are we going to clean up our act? I don't know. So the environment must be clean. It must be uncluttered. There are places you go to which are clean, but there's so much clutter that you start getting dizzy. It's too many things. It must be simple, elegant, clean, neat, organized. Then you must have the right association of ideas. Maybe a lamp that is lit. Maybe a bell that is associated with spiritual activity. Maybe a picture of the Lord. Whatever it is that inspires you should be around. And you must be comfortable in the seat. Seat of meditation must be comfortable. Not too soft, not too hard, not too high, not too low, etc. And then powerfully make suggestions to the mind to keep to the mantra for the time being, which is a little bit of preparation must be there. You sit quietly by yourself and allow the external sounds to die away. Die means they may not die, but your mind focuses on the mantra and switches off from other distracting sounds. You must also be in a silent environment. Now you may say in a city like Delhi where there is so much noise, where am I going to find silence? You may not find a silent place, but you can certainly find a silent time. If you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, doesn't matter where you live, it will be silent. Yeah? Because all the party goers, they come home at 4 o'clock. And the people who wake up and go for a jog or walk in the morning, they wake up much later. So 4 to 6 is a time which is perfect for spiritual sadhana and study, because everybody else is fast asleep. And even those who are awake are studying, so they are not making noise. All this, then you must persuade the mind to remain there. You must tempt the mind to remain focused on the mantra. and last resort, punish the mind when it doesn't follow. So, there are two things that he says. Earlier he says, fix the mind steadily on me, which is single pointed focus meditation. Now he's saying, strive to attain me by Abhyasa Yoga, which is a broader focus, much easier for us to pursue and succeed at. Now, let's take a look at the take-home points. What are the points that we are going home with today? Number one, what we discussed is what bhakti is not. Common understanding of bhakti, we smashed and understood what bhakti is. Second, very important point we discussed is the difference between love and attachment. Attachment is self-love, selfish. Love is loving another individual with no strings attached. Next, we discuss the spiritual practices upasana of karma yoga, bhakti yoga and jnana yoga, which lead up to meditation in verse 8. And in verse 9, he says, 9 to 12, he says, if you're not able to meditate, then there are other alternatives for you. So the first alternative we saw in verse 9, which is Abhyasa Yoga. And if you're not able to do even this, we'll see what he says, for which you'll have to come tomorrow.